welcome everyone to part 2 of our conversation of what happens when changemakers gather. Again, this conversation is for Blooming Willow's 10th anniversary this year. And today we're joined again by Blooming Willow's founder and CEO, Leslie Avant-Brown, and another one of her mentors and master teachers. And so I would love to turn it over to y'all to introduce yourselves again. Please let us know your name, where you're from, where you're currently based, and then what's something you've done for yourself this week.
Should I go first?
Yes.
All right. I'm Belma Gonzalez. I live and work from Oakland, California, North Oakland specifically, home of the Black Panthers. They were created co-created just a few blocks from here, and I honor that history. It's something I did for myself this week is that I went to the art store and I got additional supplies to continue my art practice. I watercolor, and so I had fun at the art store getting renewed supplies for that practice.
Yes, I love it. I see why she continues to be my shiro. I'm like, yes, art supplies, check. Need to do that. I am Leslie Avant-Brown from Detroit, in Detroit. Let's see, something I've been doing this week for myself. So I'm on this deep clean. And so I have been cleaning everything, and also organizing and editing. I've been watching some show on Netflix about editing. And so I'm like, I need to edit. So that's been my thing. Yes.
Inspiring.
And I can introduce myself again. I'm Quita Tinsley Peterson. I use they, them pronouns. I'm currently based in the Bay in California by way of Atlanta, Georgia. And something that I've done for myself this week is I repotted a few of my plant babies. I used a little bit of the time between the rain and the sun setting earlier this week here in Oakland to quickly replant my babies or repot them, even though yesterday was a really beautiful sunny day. So if I would have waited 2 days, I would have had so many hours to get it done.
But we didn't know. We didn't know what was happening.
We didn't know. We've been getting hit with all these storms. I had to use the time while I had it. So thank you both so much for making time for this conversation. I'd love to hear, how did the two of y'all meet?
Wow, Leslie. Yeah, what do you remember?
Yeah. So the first time I met you, I was registered for CFT. Did not know much about coaching or coach training programs, but several folks were like, you should probably do this. I had one coaching session from Liz, and I was like, okay, that was helpful. And I walked in the room and you were doing your Belma thing, walking around the room, meeting people, greeting folks, saying hello. And I remember sneaking behind you to go to my seat. Yeah, so that was our meeting. That was our meeting.
Wow.
It's yeah, let me slide in here.
Wow. So what I remember, that was such an incredible cohort. It was the second group of coaching students that I had the honor to lead with Kim, the two of us. I had led one cohort before that with someone else who's wonderful, but we weren't a good match. So we'll get to that matching thing later. So I felt really good coming into that room that I had this colleague, friend, coaching partner that I was going to be co-leading, and these wonderful people in the room. It just felt really different than the first cohort. And what I remember is that Leslie was very quiet, which I'm having a disconnect. Not that you can't be quiet, but the personality, the person we know now, was in there, I guess, but I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware of all, the multitude that was Leslie yet, because she remained pretty quiet through that 9-month process. Right? I mean, you agree with that, right? I'm not making that up.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, you're not making it up. It was completely real, right? And I think it was like the wounding, right? Where I had just my protectors were up, right? And
Yeah.
so I was very guarded, and very much my rep was very present. My what do you call our internal manager?
Yes, yes, yes. And that was even before we were kind of aware of protectors, and we were calling them a different thing at that time and thinking it was one. And anyway, but yeah, that makes so much sense now that was what was happening. Yeah.
How long ago was this?
Oh, yeah. Again, I turn it to you.
Yeah, that was 10 years ago, right? Like that is the beginning of the Blooming Willow story,
Yes,
right? When we
of
talk
course.
about what happens when change makers gather, right? Like
Wow.
I think that was the solar system, right? Like when those stars collide. So I do really see that as it was the birth, right, of Blooming Willow.
That's
Mhm.
right. So was our year 2012 to 2013? Was it sort of like that?
Yep, it
Yeah.
was like that. Mhm.
Okay.
Oh,
Wow. Incredible.
yes. Belma, I'm interested, what led you to coaching?
Yeah. What led me to coaching was fear, extreme fear. I was an accidental executive director. I had been at a nonprofit, a community clinic for women for many years. Let me think, 14 years. And I was asked to be an interim ED when my predecessor went on maternity leave. I said, I will do this if you promise to come back after maternity leave. She didn't. And I found myself being the ED. And I was terrified, really, really terrified. Again, this is, ancient times. I didn't know about protectors, but yeah, my protector was like, just pretend you got this, pretend, 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 while internally I was freaked out. So I went to a meeting of community clinics, and someone brought in their coach to do a demo in front of us. And the person sitting next to me said, this is probably something like, this is woo woo, I'm going to volunteer to be their person and just, blow this out of the water. They were really skeptical. And I thought very brave that they were going to do this kind of performance art and blast this, whatever this was, coaching thing. And they had an amazing coaching experience in front of us all, completely converted. She came back, sat next to me and said, I'm hiring her. And I thought, so am I. And I did. I hired her. That was on a Friday. I hired her on Monday. That was Eileen Blumenthal, whose business name is Rocket Science, because it's not. And I can't imagine being an ED in the situation I was in without her. I mean, I guess I would have gutted it through, but I can't. I don't know. I don't know if I would have survived. So 5 years I was an ED. And I don't know that I worked with her for 5 years. I can't remember where in that process I hired her, but several years. And she, at that time, this is in the 90s, was one of the few certified coaches who was working with people in the nonprofit sector. Coaching at that time was, for corporate folks. Like we didn't even know, really, I did not know what coaching meant, what is that? So, and I thought it was magic working with Eileen. So that was my intro. And then when I left the clinic, I worked for a leadership program for women in women's health, emerging leaders in women's health, most of whom were women of color, many of whom were immigrants. and I was working with them once they had graduated from the program. It was a year-long program. So I was often saying, hey, you should work with the coach, because some of them were very new EDs themselves. They founded little grassroots organizations and really starting to take their leadership forward in that way. And I would recommend, coaches to them. I now knew a couple of coaches through Eileen. So there was Eileen and a couple of other people. And one person said, I want a coach and I want it to be you. And I said, well, I'm not a coach. And we went back and forth. I want you, back and forth. I contacted Eileen. Eileen said, you've always acted like a coach. When you were working with your staff, I thought you were coaching them. That's what you were doing. You don't know that, but you were. Why don't you go ahead and do you want to do it? Go ahead and do it. I'm here. Here's a book. Try it. So I did. I loved it. Then I decided, okay, I want to get certified. And I think I again contacted Eileen, and she said, that is so amazing. The universe is working for us. I today got a coupon. I don't know if they called it coupon, but whatever, something from the school I was intending to go to saying something, a discount for somebody that you refer. And I was going to call you and give this to you. And and literally, I called her and she had this thing for me. So, because I was worried about like, how am I going to pay for this? It was still a worry, even with the coupon, but I did it. And then, and I graduated in 2004 with the intention to coach in the nonprofit sector, which with that school was, they didn't understand. People would say, people in my classes and the teachers, the instructors would say, nonprofit, well, they don't make any money. So how are you going to get paid? I said, okay, you don't know, you don't get the sector. So I was always the only nonprofit person in the room, and very often the only person of color in the room. So there was a lot they didn't understand in that school. But I knew that going in, and I wanted to be certified. So I accepted that as best I could, and graduated in 2004. And that's how I got into it. And who knew? I didn't know what I was opening up for myself. I'm so glad I did.
So beautiful. I love that. And also resonate with your story too, of like, I come to coaching through my role as an executive director, but I never intended to be an ED. I was on the board of an organization and I was like, they really need someone to do operations around here. Like someone needs to be like making sure the team is taken care of and the office is taken care of. And I approached the ED and she was like, would you like to be co-director? And I was like, no, I don't. I don't know why you would ask me that. That's really weird that you would say that to me. I went to be an ops coordinator, maybe a manager. And then we like negotiated and I ended up being deputy director. And I'm just like, I literally don't know why I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? And then a year or so later was co-executive director. She got her master plan, it came to be, but that led us to Leslie. And so, I definitely do not think my tenure as a executive director would have went as long as it did or as well as it did without Leslie being our coach and coming into our lives when she did. And also just not being familiar with coaching in that way, or like, I felt like the other folks we interviewed, they wanted to be like couples counselors or therapists. Yes. It's like, I don't like this. And then we met Leslie and she got it. She got us as like leaders in the nonprofit space, as young Black folks, as young queer folks leading this work. It's like, and the next thing you know, we're also coaches. And it's like, how do we get here?
And the next thing you know, right. Snap the fingers. And I've found that having that history, like I now think I had to go through that 5 years as an ED. It wasn't the easiest, it wasn't the easiest 5 years. It feels a little like having gone through a war, with all due respect to real war, but it was my personal kind of internal war. And I feel like I went through that in order to now coach people who are in those circumstances, especially younger women of color. But most of my coachees have been either, they're in some kind of leadership, and often leadership they did not expect to be in. Like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I came here to do, and yeah, and I love that. I love being able to know what that feels like and bring that in and have them tell their own version of it. Everybody's experiencing it in their own way, but to support them in a way that comes from I know in my gut, some of what you probably are feeling right now.
Thank you. I'd love to hear from you, Leslie. What was the impact of having Belma as one of your coaches, as one of your mentors?
Yeah, I think Belma is quite humble in how she talks about her contribution to coaching. In our world, for folks that are truly vested in movement building and social change, she's known as La Madrina Chingona of coaching. Right. And so while she comes in very humble in what she does in finding leaders, what she really does as a being is she calls you to the ultimate expression of yourself. Right. And she does not back away from your power, nor does she allow you to slowly come into it. She's like a boom. Right. And similar to Kim in bringing in love, she brings in power in that same way. And I think it's so important to talk about the face of coaching would not look like this if not for her contribution. She was one of the people who advocated for more coaches of color to come into the field. She found funding for people to continue their study and to become certified and accredited. I think, while ICF is flawed in its design, I think that there would be less folks of color that are actually certified coaches without Belma Gonzalez, right? And not only does she support you in your initial becoming, she stays with you, right? There are 2 coach training programs right now that are headed by people of color. Mine at Blooming Willow Coaching and Healing Justice and Liberation, who is founded by my soul brother, who is a part of my cohort. And Belma has supported us both in every phase of our design, playing the part of like mentor, serving on our teams, coming to our sort of listening sessions, right? I don't know how she does it. And it's not just for us, right? It's for all of the folks that she literally holds. And there's something I'm really curious. I think she's figured out how to clone herself, because every person I meet, they're like, yeah, it was Belma Gonzalez. And I'm like, how? How? I saw her doing her arts and crafts. There's no way possible. But I think that that's a part of it too. Like, she continues to lead around what this work needs to look like in our balance, right, of doing and being. And I think that is the beauty that is the La Madrina Chingona, in like, we will not use our power to burn ourselves out, right? We will use our power to support healing and growth, right, and balance. Yeah.
Leslie, wow. I have not cloned myself. I wish I could. That would be kind of interesting. Maybe. The thing I have to say is that, excuse me, the thing I have to say is that it's as much for me as it certainly is for the movement. It is certainly is for change. That's my purpose, is that I want to be I want to leave this world a good ancestor. So I want to be doing that supports those coming after me as much as I can. So absolutely, that's my purpose, and I get so much from it. I learn. I constantly learn. And I really, I just there's an interview, a videoed interview with Angela Davis. There's an exhibit at the Oakland Museum right now on Angela Davis, and there's a videoed interview with her. And one of the things she talks about is you know, and she's in her 70s, I think in her 70s. And she's saying we have to pay attention to the young people. What are the young people doing? Things change because of what young people do, you know, and so it's time to follow the young people. And I really have, I think intuitively recognize that. Now I'm very consciously recognizing that it's my time to step back, support more people who are younger than me to come forward and to learn and be pushed, continue to be pushed. And yeah, that, so yes, to what you said, Leslie. It's uncomfortable to hear some of it. I don't know why. I'll have to have some coaching around that. And I get great benefit from it too. I don't want to step over that or, you know, pretend in some kind of, you know, like that. There's multiple motivations, and one of them definitely is what I get as well.
Leslie, I know you'd shared a story earlier with us about an experience that you had with Kim calling you out or calling your power out in the space. Did you ever have one of those moments with Belma? I'm sure there are actually many. So could we get one of those stories?
Yes, I think there are tons, but the one I'll tell first is kind of like the first sort of extender part of our story, right? So I graduated from the coach training program, and all of a sudden, I got a job opportunity to become the director of coaching, right? Like the ink on my coaching certification hadn't even dried. Right. And so there was an organization in the Bay Area called Beyond Emancipation, and Belma and Johnny Manzan Santos and a couple other coaches were there. And they were doing things called test kitchens, I believe, and really looking at developing a coaching model to support foster youth and youth that were in care, either foster youth or probation youth. And so they had been developing a model and working with this team to really look at, is coaching something that could be used to support young people? And a lot of folks were very much like, they're not ready. This isn't for them. Not only is this a nonprofit, but these are young people. And so they're just not ready. Right. And so I was presented with this job opportunity. And so I turned to Belma and I was like, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to talk about what coaching is. And so I don't know if I'm this person. And so I remember a conversation where she talked about, like, you won't be there alone. There are other coaches that are a part of it. Our test kitchen is still meeting, right? I think this is something that you should explore. Right. And I'm pleased to say that 10 years later, not only is Beyond Emancipation still around, but their coaching model is still in existence. And they won while we were there. They were nominated and actually received an award for this model that we were able to collaborate around. And they won, I think they came in second place only to Coca-Cola Russia, right? As an innovative model. So this small nonprofit with a few coaches, one internal coach and coach supports on the outside was competing against this team with an internal team of like 30 or 40 coaches. Right. And so that is what Belma's calling out the power does, not just the
Well, if I can tell the inside part of that story, because you've reminded me, I haven't thought about this in many years. There was this group of us who were beginning to explore how coaching could be a benefit to community efforts. Not simply one-on-one, not simply for designated leaders, but for full community efforts, including the constituents of an organization, you know, the members or the constituents or the clients of an organization, but also the staff, the board, everybody. And Beyond Emancipation was curious about that possibility. Some of their leaders had some coaching, one-on-one coaching. So they were curious about, could this happen? And when they got funding to be able to bring in somebody internally, there was a conversation about who it should be. And we all decided there's only one person it can be. Johnny and I were like, we know who it is. We know who it is. Because the others in that conversation hadn't had the opportunity to meet Leslie yet. And yeah, we said it's Leslie Brown. She just graduated. She's of the community. She has the skills. She knows what it's all about. She knows what you all are up to in terms of your mission. She's a great coach. She's the one. And we said, we can't think of anybody else who could do this. Maybe there's somebody else out there, but we don't know them. So, so then, yeah, Leslie, when you hesitated, it's like, oh, no.
See, I didn't know this had happened behind the scenes. I just got a call out of nowhere, Quita. So I was just like,
and when there was the hesitation, it's like, that's not allowed. That was not part of the vision. But yeah, and I think I probably, because this is what I do often, is say, just, what's it hurt to put your resume in?
That's exactly what you said.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then, behind the scenes, we're like, because they were doing their due diligence, and somebody called me from the organization and said, can you, I think they may have interviewed somebody else just due diligence wise. And I'm thinking, why bother? But anyway, they did. And they asked me, what do you, give us a reference for Leslie. And I said, she's the person you should hire. I don't know who that other person is, all due respect, but I can't imagine anybody else doing this, holding this position. I'll be really disappointed. And this is somebody who was in our little meeting. I said, I'll be very disappointed in you all if you don't hire her. So I, a little bit of threat in there. I think they were already bought in. I think they were just doing their due diligence. But yeah, yeah, because it was just so obvious. So obvious.
I think that's the chingona part, right? Like, and I do think like in coaching, right, there's this rap around like it has to be woo-woo, and it has to be kind of soft and gentle and inauthentic. And I think what Belma brings to the world of coaching is authenticity. Right, not only like in who you are, but like what are your roots? What is your culture? Who do you come from? What do you represent? And I think that's so important, especially for people of color who have been in leadership where we are often, requested to show up as some part of ourselves, right? And so what Belma does is like bring folks back into alignment around like who you truly are. And then also turns up the badass. Like you will not leave Belma's presence without feeling a little more like, you know what? Why not? Right? The original hype coach.
Yeah, that's right. That's my job. Well, and I don't think I've ever analyzed it, but I think, it's based on knowing that we all have imposter syndrome. We've been brainwashed to have imposter syndrome. We've been brainwashed to be the color in the room, but not really believe and believe that the only value we bring is being the color in the room. And that's bullshit. That's BS, so I think as I'm sitting here, it's knowing that I knew as a light-skinned Chicana that the times that I was being used really just for my last name, because sometimes I didn't quite get what I was. It's always interesting to me. White folks would be the ones confused as to my cultural identity. Folks of color seldom are confused. They know. But anyway, that I knew that feeling of you just have me here to make yourself feel good or make the funders feel good or whatever. And I am so much more than that. I am so much more than that. So, and I know that happens again and again and again. With folks of color. So I'm not colluding with that. There's, I'm not going to collude with that kind of thing.
Mm.
Thank you both for sharing all the sides of that story. I love hearing that.
I had forgotten, Leslie. Wow.
Yes, yes.
And I know Kim mentioned this earlier in our conversation, and Belma, you also mentioned that there was something special about cohort 2 that Leslie was a part of. And part of that was y'all's coaching dynamic, yours and Kim's. So I'd love to hear more about what's important or what's possible when you have a good teammate who's coaching with you or leading with you.
Yeah, you know, the feeling I'm having right now, it was such a sense of relief to be coaching with someone, to be co-leading with someone who was a Black woman, who was a woman of color. Some of the disconnect in the first cohort, which I now can look back on and see that it actually added benefit to have my co-lead was a white woman, to have the tension that we had as almost a laboratory for folks in the room to go, oh yeah, oh look what's showing up, right? They're so now many years later I can look back and go, yeah, okay, that was an interesting lab, but it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good when I couldn't trust that my co-lead knew what was going on in terms of systemic oppression, historic kind of trauma that people had. So to co-lead with Kim allowed for that and allowed us to go, I think, deeper into what we were doing, what these tools, what this thing called coaching could be about. It was not, and again, all due respect to my first colleague, it got me in. It started my coach training journey. But it was really, because of the training she'd had, it was really, oh, here's these tools. Aren't these great? This is beneficial so people can think abundantly, kind of thing. And with that second cohort and onward, it was, this is how we're going to change the world. This is what can make a difference for our people. This is how we can heal. And we may not have even used those terms, but I think we felt that. I felt that with Kim, in partnership with Kim. I'm always, for some reason, Kim was always on this side.
She was always on that side.
It's so funny. I'm just realizing, why did we, that's interesting. Anyway, yeah.
So beautiful. And yeah, I'd love to hear more from you. What has healing centered coaching made possible in your own life?
Oh, wow. Well, it's almost easier to say what it hasn't done. I don't want to go into huge story. Like a lot of us, the impact of racism on my parents, on my grandparents, on my predecessors meant that I had a very difficult childhood and confusing childhood. So there was a lot, right? And I had tried therapy in like the 80s and 90s. My parents both died in the 80s. So soon after their death, I thought, I think I probably need this therapy thing. So I did therapy for a while. Coaching's what made the difference. Being coached and then also having to authentically train people around coaching and to experience the healing with others. What is it? I think it's Bell Hooks that says we heal in community. We think of healing as one-on-one, but really we heal in community. That's certainly been my experience, is that being with people who are in the various stages of healing, coming into their fullness, coming into their, who they were meant to be if we hadn't been colonized and genocide hadn't happened and slavery hadn't, like all the things, right? Who they were meant to be has allowed me to access more of that too, and has allowed me to heal. It's ongoing. I don't think I'm healed and done, but I can't imagine some of the ways I was operating in the world based on my trauma. Whew. I don't think I'd have the life I have. I don't think, I know I wouldn't. Actually, I know I wouldn't.
I so deeply resonate with that as well. I'm like, I know the life that I live today would not have been possible if I had not been coached by Leslie, if I had not been introduced to Blooming Willow, because the ripples in my own life. It's like I left that ED job, right? It was like the most secure, financially secure job I had ever had in my life. And I was just like, I don't think this is a fit anymore. And I'm not gonna hide away from that. Although Leslie and I processed that a lot in several coaching sessions. And finally I got there. I was like, okay, finally, I'll tell somebody else besides Leslie. It's like, yes, having that space to authentically show up as myself and not run away from myself. And I know, Leslie, you've spoken about it in this conversation and our previous conversation, the power of being able to authentically show up as yourself and what that makes possible for Changemakers.
Yeah, well, that thing of being able to recognize that it's not our fault too.
Mm-hmm.
That the system is set up in a really creative way to keep us in place. And then to realize, oh, but we don't have to abide by that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's been huge for me.
Yes. So as we bring this conversation to a close, I'd love to hear from you, Belma. What would you share with changemakers who are interested in exploring coaching? And then Leslie, I know you touched on this in our previous conversation, but if you have more to add, I would like to also hear from you too.
What would I share? You don't know what's coming, and that's okay. There is more possible, and you won't be alone. So go for it. Something I often say to people who are thinking about getting coach training is I can tell that some of them are coming from a place similar to what I came from, of like, oh, I want to be of service. I want to support others. And I didn't know about all this healing I'd be doing, all what would happen to me, right? So that's sort of the, hang on. You're going to be changed. You're going to be transformed. And you won't be alone, and it will feel uncomfortable because change is always uncomfortable. If it's not uncomfortable, it's not, things aren't really changing, and you will benefit from it. You will more than benefit from it. It's a good thing. So hang on. And then you will be of better service as you become aware of who you are, what you need, how you need to heal, how you need to take care of yourself in community, not alone, in community. You'll know better how to support others to do the same. So hang on. It can be a wild ride, and it's a really awesome ride. It is. Join us. And it's not a cult. Sometimes I can tell that sometimes people think, what is this? It's not. It truly is not a cult. Folks are allowed.
Are you sure, Belma?
People can
We
leave.
are a secret underground society.
That is true. That is true. But we're fun. We're loving. We're fun. We're joyful, right? And that's part of it too. Is like, wow, to have access to all that humans can feel and be,
Mm.
because we're taught to tamp it all down. We're taught, the number of groups I've worked with, rooms I've been in where people are tearing up because of some activity we're supporting them in, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm crying. I'm so sorry. I never cry. Oh, I'm so sorry." Like, wow, those are tears you've been holding back for who knows how long. And why do we hold back our tears?
Mm.
Why
Mhm.
do we do that? Why do we get taught that? And it's, it certainly is the cisgender men, but it's also the cisgender women who, we're supposed to be. But I think it's that. It's like, oh, I don't want to be, that silly woman who's crying. BS, it's like, oh no, humans cry. We got a lot to cry about. We got a lot angry tears and sad tears, and it's good. It's good stuff, and we got a lot of laughing to do, a lot of joy to access,
Mm.
and yeah, that's also what can come instead of that. Oh, let me be professional. Let me wear a mask. I can't show too much that I'm having fun, or that I'm really sad, or that I'm really angry. I gotta like have some kind of middle robotic place.
Mm.
Uh-uh. Nah, nah, we
Mm.
don't do that.
Leslie,
I
did
think, yeah. I was gonna say that for me kind of brought up that the poem, right? We are the ones we've been waiting for, right? And sort of that reminder, the time of the lone wolf, for the lone wolf is over.
Yeah,
And I would say like that's what I'm really feeling from this conversation. No one's coming,
that's
right?
right.
No one's
That's
coming
right.
to
That's
save
right.
you,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
And so for folks to really give themselves permission to stand in their power,
Yeah,
right? To really begin to own their stories and their truths, right? And no longer wait, right? The waiting is what is destroying us, right?
that's
We're
right.
waiting for our governments, we're waiting for our movements, we're waiting for these things to happen, and I think the waiting is what is killing us. Right?
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and so I think, this idea that we can no longer wait. And when we gather what is possible to be in spaces where you're seen, right? To
Absolutely.
be in spaces that get to slow down. I think one of the things about Belma's approach as a coach, right? As a being, you'll find her like very high vibration, very like you want to laugh with her. This is the person that you want to be, sipping lemon drops with, right? But as a coach, she literally leans on her knees as she approaches the person that she's coaching, letting them know that time gets to move differently, right? And that you can take as much as you need to access your power. And I think that is what this time reminds me of, right? That we get to take our time to access our power, because that is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm.
Thank you both so much. This has been a beautiful conversation. Yes, and I'm so excited to share this with the Blooming Willow community and other change makers who might not be a part of our community yet, and who might be waiting to find us, not knowing that we're
Right.
here and they're here too.
They are.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you
Oh,
again.
thank you both. What a wonderful way to start the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to part 2 of What Happens When Changemakers Gather, featuring our founder and CEO, Leslie Avant-Brown, and her mentor, Belma Gonzalez. We invite you to visit our website to learn more about our offerings, as well as our coaching certification programs at www.bloomingwillow.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube. Thank you.